Hello, everyone. I am Mark L. Vincent, and it has been a privilege to visit with a lot of people over these last months, especially during this COVID season, and to talk with folks who care very much about honoring God in the context of business and who bring their expertise with a sense that they are not just serving their own incomes, and they're not even just serving you, they're serving the kingdom of Christ. They're making a difference for the long term in what they do. And someone who has done this for quite a while and knows it well is Hedges. And we're going to talk about lean and lean process with Dale here in just a second. But Dale, let me just start by welcoming you here.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's an honor to be here and to spend time with you. You've been quite a mentor for me as well. So it's just an honor to be here.
Well, we were teasing you about your beautiful Zoom office. I'm standing here in my beautiful brand new Idaho office on my property that I live on here. It's been kind of a COVID, what do we say? It's like a little monk cell that I can work from and occasionally have quiet because I have twin 2-year-old granddaughters living in the house with me. And they've been a riot, but it does make for some background noise. So this has been a cool place to work from. And
that is cool.
I've really been looking forward to this. We had to reschedule a couple of times, and I wanted so much for you to have this conversation with me and for the benefit of others, because you have this big background in operations. You have such an extensive career there. I would like it, even before I got to get into the questions, for you to just describe a little bit about your background vocationally that brought you to the place saying, okay, I want to help a variety of companies, not just one at a time. So can you talk a little bit about that background in ops for you?
Yeah, so, well, thanks for the opportunity. So I started off in my career as a computer repair technician for a company called Intel. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah, small little company. Yes.
Small little company. And they are the ones that introduced me as a young pup in my career on this idea of what then was called quality circles. Today we'd call it a Kaizen event. And that was kind of my entry into not just operations, but also into management, as well as leadership, as well as this continuous improvement mindset. And so that got me going. I moved into production management, and all the while doing mostly self learning, but then eventually ended up in Toshiba America here in Irvine, and was in charge of production for their phone systems, their cell phones, and then eventually their laptops. And that really institutionalized for me the continuous improvement mindset, and kind of brainwashed, if you will, in the Japanese methods of operations. And that kind of launched me into some of the other things that I got into. And then eventually moved into executive leadership as a VP of operations at a company called OmniDuct, ran by some guy named Bob Rumlow. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, yes.
And just was a blessing to be part of that team. And that taught me how to change culture. And I will tell you that it was a learning experience that not only was difficult because I had a corporate background, but also one that was very successful, and really turned the culture to a focused continuous improvement model. So at the about 2-3 years ago now, I decided to go and start sharing this wisdom with other companies, and started my own company called the Hedges. Hedges
It'd be good if you could remember the name.
Yeah, if I could just remember the name, Hedges Consulting Group. And really, really technical term there. And and have just been working with multiple companies at different departments, as well as whole companies working to uh, improve the way that they serve their customers by adding value to their customer needs. So uh, I'm
Thank you
just
for
loving what I'm
walking.
doing.
I'm grateful you walked through that just so that folks could hear a little bit more about the precision side that you bring to things. Because when you're doing this in manufacturing, efficiency, getting lean, those kinds of phrases are a little bit different than if you're in human services or something. I mean, everybody wants
Sure.
to be more efficient, but you can't say, oh, the machines on line one are feeling a little cranky today, just a little bit out of sorts. They're, you know, there's a quality control aspect of this that there's very little forgiveness for,
Right.
and you've been deeply engaged in that. And here is a place we could start, Dale. I'm going to ask you, let's, you know, what is lean and who uses it and why? When I wrote that question down and told you I wanted to ask you that at the start, I was feeling a little like I was being kind of kindergartenish, but I went back and did some looking. And yes, it's true. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I know what that is," but they just recognize the word. They know it from business speak, and their definition of it isn't all that precise. So, can you help us out here?
Sure. Well, I think, one of the key aspects of lean and continuous improvement is this understanding that um, we are on a never-ending journey that creates unexpected customer value. And that that process is a process that drives us to look internally as well as externally. So we're looking to see how we are servicing our customers, but we're doing it by being internally focused. And this is done by reducing and eliminating waste. And I'm not talking about the trash bins. I'm talking about all of the activities that we do when we do service our customers. There are wastes. There are things that we do that are wasteful, that do not add value for our customer. We may do it because we think we need to do things, but if they're not adding value to our customer, and whether that's a service or a product, then it's a waste from a lean perspective. And there's actually 8 wastes in any process, any service that we provide, any product that we provide. There are 8 wastes that are targets for elimination. And so that's what this whole uh, journey is about, is reducing our waste so that our customers get the highest value possible.
Mhm. So, there's a way that you kind of had a switch flip and you got turned on to this thing. So, you got engaged in it, and there was something about it that really intrigued you, Dale. And you said, I've got to know more. I want to go deeper. This is worth it. And you've now arrived at a point where you're making those skills and those insights available to others. So, how did this begin for you? And how did you keep growing into it? And how did
Yeah.
you decide, okay, I'm gonna serve the world by doing this?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I got introduced while I was at Intel repairing computers for Intel. And my supervisor asked the group, does anybody want to participate in a thing called quality circles? And um, so I really didn't know anything about it. But it sounded like, a departure from just sitting at my repair center desk and working on computers and stuff. I said, well, I'll give it a shot. And so there was this effort of learning. I had to learn the process of quality circles. I had to learn this thing called waste and how to eliminate it and stuff like that. And there was all these techniques. And so the group decided to tackle a really big problem. And at the time, the problem was we were seeing over 20% rejects of the integrated circuits that were being installed on computers. So we would troubleshoot a computer board. We'd get down to, oh, we think it's this integrated circuit. And then we take it over to the repair area, and they would replace the integrated circuit. And then we'd come back and the integrated circuit would still be defective. And so you think about the whole process of troubleshooting, repairing, going back, troubleshooting it again, and then sending it back for the same repair over again, there was a lot of expense in that. So we started looking at what was causing that. And to make the long story short, we discovered that it was all about handling and the lack of proper handling. So the Circles group instituted a process by proper handling of integrated circuits throughout the whole process. And that literally eliminated almost every defect. It was less than 1%. And when we started going over the details of the data, it was shocking to me that as simple as just getting together and collaborating and troubleshooting, we were able to eliminate a big problem for the whole community, that repair center. And so that just kind of was kind of, like I said, it was kind of like a gateway drug. It's like I had to learn more.
Yeah.
And that actually helped me uh, build my understanding of the Toyota production system. And that was the core focus for a long time of understanding what is now known as the Toyota production system. And that's where all of the lean and continuous improvement came from.
Yeah. What I like about the people like yourself who make themselves available fractionally is that they've done something at the big place like Intel or Toyota, and you've got both of those kinds of experiences. And then what happens is there's not 27 Toyotas. There's one. And now there are places that are growing and have to scale and have to figure this out, have to eliminate the waste and need somebody with that expertise. They just don't need them all the time. And so you become available and make yourself available to those small companies, mid-sized companies who are working their way through this. And boy, there's some major mistakes that could be made there that eliminating some waste would make all the difference for their solvency and all kinds of things. So could you give us a couple of case studies out of your practice? And I really like to do the contrasting kind of thing here, Dale, where here's one that went well, here's one that didn't. Here's what the difference was for those two stories. Could you do that for me?
Yeah. So, well, let me just kind of comment what you were talking about, Mark, in that one of the things that I've also experienced is while working at the big companies, having a consulting firm come in and they do a Kaizen event and things like that. And one of the things that I learned from that was that consultants come in, they do their job, they leave, and everything goes back to normal. And so my philosophy has always been the classic, give them a fish and they'll always be asking for a fish, but teach them to fish, they'll be fishing on their own. It's that type of thing. I want to teach leadership on how to be lean champions for their own company so that after time goes by and they are comfortable, even if I leave, they can continue on their journey. And that's, to me, the most successful part of this. And so one of the things that kind of came to my mind about an optimal experience was I was working with a medical device company here in Irvine a couple of years ago. And they asked me to come in to their marketing group, not their manufacturing, but their marketing group, because they were having major problems keeping up with the new product launch schedules. And so they would have these new products coming out, but the marketing deliverables were off sync. They were missing deadlines.
Big problem.
And so that's a big problem when you're trying to launch a product and you don't have collateral, marketing collateral to give out to your sales force and stuff. So, so I came in and working with the leadership team, we just did a big deep dive into their process. And we identified some really key wastes that were causing them not to be able to stay on track with their schedule. Waiting and motion were one of the key ones where they had these deliverables that were literally going to the wrong departments. And so they would get lost in the process, these deliverables. And
Wow.
so then it wouldn't be until they got into panic mode that they would start looking for these, and then they would find them over here in somebody's in basket or inbox or whatever. And so they just didn't have a really good way of tracking that. And they didn't have a really good process to find. So we eliminated the waiting, we eliminated the motion. The other thing that we discovered is that there was a lot of duplication of effort. And this just came out of over time, people just wanting to make sure that things got done. So two or
Mhm.
three people were doing the exact same thing. So we
Mhm.
eliminated all the duplicity out of that, which caused the
Sure.
waiting as well. And then because of there was lack of communication with the status of each deliverable, that there were defects that were happening. And so by the time they were about to launch, they'd find a defect in their deliverable and they have to go back to fix it. So we started giving more prompt and accurate status of the projects, of each project, and that eliminated the defects. And by doing that type of stuff, we were able to reduce their cycle time by 10 days for almost 2 weeks, 10 days. And so what that did was eliminate them being late. They were
Mm.
actually on time with their deliverables, and that really made a difference in their ability to stay on track with their
Wow.
deliverables.
Wow. I'm thinking that there ought to be a number of companies with accounts payable departments that could really benefit from what you're
Well, and
talking
here's
about there.
that's a great point, Mark, because if you have a process, whether it's accounts payable, whether it's accounts receivable,
Right.
you just think of all the different gears that are turning inside of an organization. All of those operations have a process,
Mm-hmm.
and every process has some level of waste in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not doing a regular uh, scheduled routine of eliminating waste, you're building in that lower level of service to your customers with everything that you do.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
mentioned earlier that companies are growing. Well, if you're growing and you've got an inefficient process, you're increasing that inefficiencies in your
Mm-hmm.
process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're growing, you really need to be diving into lean and continuous
Yeah.
improvement to eliminate all of that waste.
You remind me of, it's just become a favorite phrase of mine. That's what you call growing a donut. When you grow a donut, the hole in the middle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and getting to
Yeah.
the edges of it just take longer, bigger journey. So
Yeah.
Dale, what's an example here of where, boy, they just couldn't get their minds or hearts around it as they were working at some kind of lean process? And what do you think the difference was from that first story of that marketing department figuring it out and the company that you're going to tell us about that just
Yeah.
didn't get there?
Well, this particular company, I'll keep it vague,
Yeah, you
but
probably have
it was
to.
it was a manufacturing company, and the company thought the owners thought that they could launch lean, and they were excited about doing lean, and literally we started down the road, and within 3 months, um, it stalled, and And again, I'm operating under the mindset of I'm teaching leadership how to be the champions, because they're the ones that are going to take on the torch and carry it far after I'm gone. And but this particular owner was distracted with many other things. And I'm talking about a small company. I'm not talking about a gigantic, big company. Um, and so uh, within 3 months or so, just basically the owner just said, I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have the time. He wouldn't delegate, he wouldn't relinquish some of the control that he wanted to have. And so, frankly, when COVID hit,
Mm,
it was it's probably a good time to go on pause. So,
Wow.
so they've kind of stalled out, and as far as I understand that they are doing some level of continuous improvement, but it's probably not as strong as it could be if
Mhm.
they had maintained that. And I think that comparison is really for me the thing that makes the difference. Um, that to me, there's two things that make a difference. One is um, the top leadership has to have a growth mindset that you can always get better. No matter how great you are today, you can always be better at what you can do tomorrow, especially when it comes to your customers. So that's that. You know, if top leadership has that mindset, that means that the culture has that mindset, and they're well positioned to start up with lean and continuous improvement. But I think the other thing that a lot of, I'll just be blunt, a lot of consultants don't focus on is top leadership also has to have a people-centric mindset. We call it servant leadership,
Mhm.
because without that mindset and understanding that lean and continuous improvement builds and grows the, the most important asset that any company has, its team. If you're not growing that team, you're not you're not providing an ever increasing value to your customer. And
Mm.
so, if you have a growth mindset, if you have a people-centric mindset, then you are well positioned to be successful in lean and continuous improvement.
It may be here, Dale, that we're right already kind of answering the question I want to ask you next. I know that you've got a background with Townsend leadership training and so
Yeah,
forth, and that servant leadership piece, the people awareness certainly comes into that. So let's say you've got a company owner who's trying to discern, can we do this? It seems like there's a people answer in here somewhere. So
sure.
they're trying to figure out, is pursuing lean, really getting disciplined about that, is that a good fit for our company and our culture? Um, First of all, how would they know it's a good fit? Let me ask it
Yeah,
that way, and then add to that by asking, how do they get started?
yeah. So, three things. If you have a company that is serving a customer either by services or products, you are probably following some level of process to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
That process can be well engineered or it can be kind of ad hoc as people try to figure out what they need to do to get things done, right? If you have a process, you are absolutely ripe for lean and continuous improvement because every process can be improved. And that's what lean does, is eliminate the waste out of every process. And then, as I mentioned earlier, uh, the one thing that really has to play into this is the top leadership and their mindsets, growth mindset, servant leadership mindset, as well as just this desire to serve their customers at the highest level possible. And by doing that, you're just going to automatically uh, set into motion a process by that continuous improvement, trying to be better for your customer in every way, shape, and form. And then what are some of the things that they should do to consider starting up? The first thing is learning. You need to learn the 8 wastes, how to see them, how to identify them. And then, of course, learning how to use lean basic techniques to eliminate the waste. It might sound easy to say, oh, look, we have somebody waiting for that process to finish. Let's eliminate that waste of waiting. Um, well, there might be a process, we would call it 5S'ing or Kanban. There's all these different strategies that Lean brings to the table that helps that organization be better at what they do. Um, and then the last thing I would say is that to get started is you have to build in an organizational routine where you're continually, constantly attacking that inefficiency of waste and eliminating that from your organization. So those would be the three things that I would say would be needed to get started.
Yeah.
And
So
if I may just say, I would be
please.
honored to help anybody uh, in that process to get
Yeah.
them started. Yeah.
Well, we will make sure that there's contact information for you in the discussion guide that folks can find
Beautiful.
where this the blog recording is linked to.
Beautiful.
We'll also, I think, want to make sure that we've got a quick and easy access to what those 8 wastes are,
Yeah.
and even maybe what some of the vocabulary is. I think sometimes when I'm talking with people about this, they start tripping over words like Kaizen, and they just are uncomfortable speaking what feels like a foreign language thing,
Right.
and so they kind of shut it down,
Yeah.
and that's tragic when that happens. So that also kind of points to something here, and this is probably where we're going to have to wrap it up. But I want to ask about the early wins here. Because to do this in a
Mm,
sustaining way, to change the whole culture around it, to find that needed champion that you were describing, because I'm guessing, Dale, that's what you were. You became a champion for it inside of your culture. That's why it lived
sure.
there. That's why you had some successes. You weren't sitting there saying, well, roll our eyes. Here's the latest and greatest. You got
Right.
behind it, and there was a stick-to-itiveness. And that's needed when you have a group that doesn't really have a history, and now they want to have one. So they have to get some momentum going, and that means some early wins, stuff where they can see the progress. What are some of the typical early wins that you like to see?
Yeah. So, I've implemented um, lean and continuous improvement into 6 companies before coming into my consulting practice, and when I have thought about what those early wins are, they're pretty consistent. You're going to see a reduction of inventory in an organization. And sometimes that inventory can be paperwork. So when I'm not just talking about parts as in a manufacturing thing, but also in front office operations, you'll see paperwork, reduce and things like that. But while you're reducing that inventory, the level of customer service either maintains or even gets better. And typically I see, customer service get better because now you're not bogged down with inventory. The other thing is you'll see a increased capacity or production, whatever that looks like for the company, without doing a whole lot of high capital expenditure, a big dollar investment. You can increase your capacity and your production just by eliminating waste out of your operations. And so that's a big surprise to a lot of folks because when you say, we can increase your production by 10, 15, 20%, and they say, well, how much is that going to cost me? And we basically say just the time of working out the elimination of waste. That's a big surprise. I think another area is reduction of the direct costs, operating costs. And then of course, all of that stuff starts to impact and grow the bottom line, in profit margins and things like that. But I think the other thing too is a little something that isn't as obvious is a higher engagement rate of team members because now they're part of the solution to these elimination of waste that we have because we believe that if you are bringing in your team members to talk about how to solve problems, they're growing and they are enjoying that process of collaboration. And so you'll see a higher level of engagement with your team members. That then translates into developing future leaders, right?
Mhm.
Because they're learning problem solving, they're learning how to lead in a team environment. And that is part of their growth as they continue down the road in their career, that they are learning these techniques that are the basic foundations for great leadership. So those are the types of things that I look for when we start going down the road.
Dale, this has been a treat. Thanks so much. And this has been great information. As we wrap this, I want to make a fine point. You might have a response to this before we go, but I think this feels really important. One of the things that I run into in helping to cultivate younger executive leaders, people who are really trying to make their mark, they're committed, they care, they're growing, is to help them begin to think that whatever decisions they are making has to address top and middle and bottom lines. And it has to address now, near term, and long term.
Sure.
And if it can't address that, they need to know why. They need to be able to articulate it. They need to at least be able to articulate the trade-off. If they cannot do these things, then they are redundant to whoever is watching over them, because the one who's watching over their work has to do that part for them.
Right.
They have to ask the question that this young gun, this strong young leadership woman or man is, saying that they want to get accomplished.
Yeah.
So in your work, you are in this spot where you really bring impact to the midline, which is what I'm finding is about the hardest thing for people to get their minds around. And I think you hit the home run here by talking about how it has to be a regimented discipline, not something you emphasize for 6 months, but something that you just stay on, because unless you've negotiated a better price, it is your time and motion and whatever other waste that you can eliminate. Am I close to the mark here?
Yeah, I think you're right on, Mark. I think you hit it right on the nail. That it's when you've got a fully operational, if you will, lean and continuous improvement journey, you'll see top management working with middle management, and middle management working with the regular team member, that all three levels are working together to solve these problems that are universally helping the customer. I'll tell you, when I was in my quality circles back at Intel, I'm an entry-level computer repair technician, and that project I talked to you about with the defective integrated circuits, we got to present to Andy Grove.
Wow.
I'm standing in front of Andy Grove with my 5 minutes worth of the presentation, telling him about this improvement that we did. And if you go to Toyota today, they have annual conference where Toyota folks who are literally turning nuts and bolts on a car are presenting to the president of Toyota on these solutions that they're coming up with. That doesn't come naturally. You have to create that culture and that organization so you can do that. And that really drives people to want to excel for their customers. So,
I'm glad we took these couple of extra minutes, because I think that's what makes the case. That's where the ROI is found. Yeah. And if you are reducing barriers, and that's another waste that is out of the way. It's somewhere on that group of 8, I'm pretty sure. So
it's
Dale,
everywhere.
Thank you very much. And for all of you listening, we're putting Dale's contact information on the video version of this. You can get it from the blog post at convenenow.com. And there is a discussion guide, as we've done with all of these, that you can take right into a team management conversation or departmental conversation. Talk this through, think about what you want to be doing in relationship to what you're already doing. And we really commend that kind of a resource to you. Thank you all for paying attention to this and staying with us in this conversation. And we wish you well as you do your work and do it to your absolute best. Thank you very much for listening, and farewell.
Thank you, Mark.